Welcome to another episode of Terry's Notes, and today we are going to be looking at a very important topic, which is changing the subject of the formula. So we'll start off with something that is very simple, and this is something fundamental to mathematics, and you need to understand this as best as you can. So suppose we have an equation y plus 2 is equal to x, and we wanted to make y the subject of the formula. Now what does that mean? What that simply means is that we need to write an equation which says y is equal to something. So in this case we have y plus 2 is equal to x. Therefore on the left hand side we need to get rid of this plus 2. In order to do that we need to subtract 2 from both sides of the equation. And this is the key thing you need to remember. Whatever you do on the left hand side of the equation, you need to do the same thing on the right hand side. So if we subtract 2, so we have y plus 2, we're going to subtract 2 from both sides of the equation. We end up with y plus 2 minus 2 is equal to x minus 2, right? In this case we are minusing 2 from both sides of the equation. So therefore we end up with y, because 2 minus 2 will give us 0, is equal to x minus 2, right? And this is how you make y the subject of the formula. Now some people will teach you it like, let's say we have y plus 2 is equal to x. You'll hear some teachers will teach you it like this. They'll say, in order to make y the subject of the formula, we need to move plus 2 to this side of the equation, and if we move plus 2 to the right hand side it becomes minus 2, so therefore it becomes y is equal to x minus 2. Okay, but essentially this is what you are doing. You are subtracting 2 from both sides of the equation. Let's try this other one. We have y minus 5 is equal to x, and we want to make y the subject of the formula. Alright, remember what that means? That means that we need to get an equation that says y is equal to something. So we have y minus 5 on the left hand side. So if we add 5 on both sides of the equation, we end up with y minus 5 plus 5 equal to x plus 5. Right, minus 5 plus 5 gives us 0, so therefore this becomes y is equal to x plus 5. And like I said, some people will teach you it like this. You will say y minus 5 is equal to x. If we want to get y is equal to, it'll be x, we'll move the minus 5 on this side and it'll become plus 5, right? So you realize we get the same thing, y equal x plus 5, but essentially what you are doing is adding 5 to both sides of the equation. Okay, now let's say we have an equation 2x is equal to 6 minus y, and we want to make y the subject of the formula. Right? Again, the question is asking us for an equation that says y is equal to something. Okay, now we have 2x equals 6 minus y, so the y is on the right hand side. Now what you can do at this stage here is add y to both sides of the equation. So we end up with 2x plus y is equal to 6 minus y plus y. Now what that does is we end up with 2x plus y is equal to 6, because minus y plus y is 0, and now we want to make y the subject, so we need to subtract 2x from each side of the equation. So 2x plus y minus 2x is equal to 6 minus 2x. 2x minus 2x gives us 0, so therefore y is equal to 6 minus 2x. Okay, and let me show you the alternative way. We have 2x equal 6 minus y, and the easiest thing to do here is to take the minus y and move it to this side of the equation. So that becomes y plus 2x is equal to 6, and therefore y, take the plus 2x and we move it this way, is equal to 6 minus 2x. Right? Once you get comfortable with changing the subject of the formula, typically this is how you would write your answer, right? But you need to understand what I'm doing on both sides of the equation. Let's say we have 5y equal to 10 and we want to make y the subject of the formula. All we need to do is to remove this 5. In order to do that, we need to divide both sides of the equation by 5. So we end up with 5y over 5 is equal to 10 over 5. Alright, this 5 will cancel with this 5, and we end up with y is equal to 10 divided by 5, which is 2. Okay? And if we look at it from the other side, we can say 5y is equal to 10. Therefore, y is equal to 10 over 5. Because on the left hand side, we have 5 multiplied by y. So therefore, if we take this 5 and we bring it on this side of the equation, it becomes divide. So y is equal to 10 divided by 5, which is equal to 2. Okay, in this example, we have 5y plus 2 is equal to x, and we want to make y the subject of the formula again. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to get rid of this plus 2. In order to do that, we subtract 2 from both sides of the equation. So we end up with 5y plus 2 minus 2. We also have to do the same thing on the right hand side. So this becomes x minus 2. 2 minus 2 gives us 0. So therefore 5y is equal to x minus 2. In order to get rid of this 5, we need to divide both sides of the equation by 5. So we end up with 5y over 5 is equal to x minus 2 over 5. 5's cancel, so we end up with y is equal to x minus 2 over 5. Alright, like I said, when you get comfortable with changing the subject of the formula, it'll become second nature, and you will write your answer like this: 5y plus 2 equal to x. Excuse me. So we write 5y is equal to x minus 2 because we move plus 2 to the right hand side and it becomes minus 2. And in order to make y the subject now, we just divide both sides by 5. So this becomes x minus 2 over 5. Okay. Now we have another equation here. Y divided by 2 is equal to 6. And we want to make y the subject of the formula. Now, for some reason, a question like this typically gives students trouble. Why? Because they do not recognize that 6 can be written as 6 divided by 1. So what I'm saying, so we have y over 2 is equal to 6 over 1. This equation And this equation is exactly the same thing, because 6 divided by 1 is equal to 6. Now the reason why I'm writing it like this is that in order to change the subject of the formula here, you have a fraction being equal to a fraction. So we have something like a over b is equal to c over d, right? Whenever we have a fraction like this, it is true to say that a multiplied by d is equal to b multiplied by c, right? This is cross multiplying. So this is what I'm going to do here to make y the subject of the formula. I'm going to say y multiplied by 1 will give me y is equal to 2 multiplied by 6, which gives me 12, right? So whenever you have fractions, when you have to change the subject of the formula, you may have to write one side of the equation as a fraction, right? So in this case we had 6, so therefore we can write 6 as 6 over 1. Let's try another example here. Alright, so we have 7 divided by 2y is equal to 2x, and we want to make y the subject of the formula. So the first thing we do, we write it as 2x can be written as 2x over 1. So we have 7 over 2y is equal to 2x over 1. Again, we're going to cross multiply. So we're going to say 2y multiplied by 2x will give us 4xy, which is equal to 7 multiplied by 1, which will give us 7. If I want to make y the subject, I need to divide both sides of the equation by 4x. So we end up with 4xy over 4x equal 7 over 4x. So the 4x will cancel, and we end up with y is equal to 7 over 4x. Alright, like I said, when this becomes second nature to you, you will write it as 7 over 2y is equal to 2x, and this will be written as 7 over 2y is equal to 2x over 1. We cross multiply, so we end up with 4xy equals to 7, and therefore y, if you have to move the 4x to the right hand side, it becomes divide, so it's 7 over 4x, right? Now suppose we have square roots in our equation. Now how do we treat with that? Okay, in this equation we have x is equal to the square root of y minus 2. Now in order to get rid of a square root sign, what we need to do is to square both sides of the equation. So x squared, because we are squaring both sides, it's equal to y minus 2. Whenever you have the square root of something, let's say the square root of a, and we are squaring it, right? Now from indices we know the square root is a to the power half, and we are squaring. And if we apply our indices rule, it becomes half multiplied by 2, which is 1, which is equal to a. So therefore if I square the square root of a, it becomes a. So that is why when I square the square root of y minus 2, I end up with y minus 2. Okay, so let me just put this so you understand what I'm doing here. So I'm squaring both sides of the equation. So this becomes x squared is equal to y minus 2. And we want to make y the subject of the formula. At this point here, what you can do, you can just write y minus 2 is equal to x squared. All I've done is basically rewrite the equation, because we know x squared is y minus 2. Therefore we can say y minus 2 is equal to x squared. Makes sense, right? So somebody might say, well, why didn't you change the signs? Well, all I've done is move the right hand side to the left hand side and the left hand side to the right hand side. Right? In order to make y the subject now, it'll be y minus 2. I'm have to add 2 on both sides. X squared plus 2. Minus 2 plus 2 is 0. So therefore y is equal to x squared plus 2. Right? Again, when you become comfortable, this is how you're going to write your answer. You're going to start off with x is equal to y minus 2 square root. We're squaring both sides to get rid of the square root sign, so it becomes x squared equals y minus 2. Again, we write it over as y minus 2 is equal to x squared, and y becomes x squared plus 2. Right? I just took the minus 2 and I moved it on this side of the equation, and it becomes plus 2. Alright, so we have a bigger looking equation here, and we want to make y the subject of the formula. Once you have an equation that has lots of brackets, first thing we need to do is to remove the brackets. So we're going to apply our distributive law. So we're going to take 2 and multiply by y, and this will give us 2y. We're going to take the 2 and multiply by minus 2, which will give us minus 4. I'm going to expand this bracket here, so 4 by y gives us 4y, and 4 by plus 1 gives us plus 4. Okay, so what we should do at this point is bring all the y's on one side of the equation. Right? And hold on, I made a slight error here. This should have been a 3. So this will be 2y, and 2 multiplied by minus 3 will give us minus 6. Sorry, my mistake. Right? And right, so let's bring all the y's on one side of the equation. So minus 2y minus 4y, 2y minus 4y is equal to 4 plus 6. Okay, some students may get confused as to what I did here. Alright, so the first thing I did was to remove the 4y from this side of the equation. Right? In order to do that, I need to subtract 4y from both sides. So that's how I got this minus 4y here, and this one disappeared. And what I also did was to remove the minus 6. In order to remove the minus 6 from this side, I need to add 6 to both sides of the equation. So I end up with plus 6 on this side. So 2y minus 4y gives me minus 2y, and 6 plus 4 gives me 10. And in order to get rid of this minus 2, I need to divide by minus 2 on both sides. So this becomes minus 2y over minus 2, which is equal to 10 over minus 2. So therefore y is equal to minus 5. Okay. Alright, now let's look at an actual equation, and this equation here is used to find the period of a pendulum. So we want to make L the subject of the formula in this case here. So we have t is equal to 2 pi square root of L on g. As soon as students see this, they get confused and they don't know what to do. Alright, we want to make L the subject. So the first thing I would do is to remove this 2 pi. In order to do that, we divide both sides of the equation by 2 pi. So we end up with t over 2 pi is equal to 2 pi over 2 pi root L on g. 2 pi's will cancel, right? So we end up with t over 2 pi is equal to the square root of L on g. Now remember, we said that when we have a square root in our equation, we need to square both sides. So we have t over 2 pi, squaring the left hand side, and we're going to square the right hand side as well. So we have square root of L over G, and I'm going to square this. So we're going to end up with t squared over 4 pi squared, right? I'm just applying our rules for indices. T squared gives us t squared, and 2 pi squared gives us 4 pi squared, not 2 pi squared, right? And this becomes L on G. So, okay, so let's just shift to this side here. Alright, so essentially what we have now is a fraction on the left hand side and a fraction on the right hand side. So what we should do is cross multiply. Alright, so we want to make L the subject of the formula, so I'll write it as 4 pi squared L equal to t squared G. Alright, and if I have to make L the subject of the formula, I just need to divide both sides of the equation by 4 pi squared. So this becomes 4 pi squared L over 4 pi squared, and this is t squared G over 4 pi squared. Alright, 4 pi squared cancels with this 4 pi squared, so we end up with L is equal to t squared G over 4 pi squared. Okay, and we've made L the subject of the formula. So I want you to look over this example because this is a tricky one that students get trouble with. We have another equation here. F is equal to 9 over 5 multiplied by C plus 32. And we want to make C the subject of the formula. Right? So first thing we should do is to just write over the equation as 9 over 5 C plus 32 is equal to F. Right? Okay, so we want to make C the subject of the formula. What we need to do in this instance here is to multiply every single term by 5. Right? So if we multiply the first term by 5, we end up with 9C plus 32 multiplied by 5 will give us 160, and 5 multiplied by F gives us 5F. And we're making C the subject, so we need to subtract 160 from both sides of the equation. So this becomes 9C is equal to 5F minus 160. And if we have to get rid of the 9, we need to divide both sides of the equation by 9, and this becomes C is equal to 5F minus 160 over 9. Okay. In this example, we want to make P the subject of the formula. So we have Q is equal to P squared minus R over T. Again, we should write this as a fraction on the left hand side. So we put Q over 1 is equal to P squared minus R over T. And we have a fraction being equal to another fraction. So we simply cross multiply. And we want to make P the subject of the formula, so we need to make sure that the P is on the left hand side. So I will write it as P squared minus R is equal to QT. And in order to get rid of this minus R, we have to add R on both sides of the equation, and this will become P squared is equal to QT plus R. And in order to get P as the subject of the formula, we need to find the square root on both sides of the equation. So this becomes P is equal to the square root of QT plus R. And our last example, we want to make, sorry, this is not make P the subject of the formula. We want to make N the subject of the formula. Right? So easiest thing to do here is to square both sides of the equation. So we end up with t squared is equal to 5m over 12n. Right? Remember, when we square a square root, the square root disappears. So we can write this as t squared over 1 and do our cross multiplying. So we end up with 12n t squared is equal to 5m. And in order to get rid of the t squared, we divide both sides by t squared. So we end up with 12n is equal to 5m over t squared. And in order to make n the subject, we need to divide both sides by 12. So this becomes n is equal to 5m over 12 t squared. Okay, so that is it with changing the subject of the formula. What you need to do is to practice lots of these types of questions until you become comfortable, because this is one of the fundamental topics for mathematics.